Hello and welcome to Ruggles Round Up. It's the portion of our Elevated Mission podcast where we talk about all things sports. We're super excited to bring this episode to you. The Cowboys encounter their greatest nemesis. What's that? It's the first round of the playoffs. I mean, it is a for sure stop. It's a hard stop for the Cowboys when they enter the playoffs. That's known as the first round. What do you think about this game? I mean, was it a surprise to you? The Packers were playing kind of their hottest football of the season. Seemed like the Cowboys were on a downward trend, but I think everyone was a little surprised that the Packers were able to get the best of the Cowboys in this fashion, the way that they did.
Yeah, it was a very surprising game to me after watching the Cowboys be one of the highest scoring teams in all of the NFL this past year. It was pretty shocking to see them get so limited within that game, getting routed by that Packers team. I think there was an over 20-point deficit at one point in that matchup, and so just surprising on all ends. I had been fooled by the Cowboys, as you know, I say it every single year. I even said it on the podcast, so I look smarter on the podcast, so I probably shouldn't even say that I got fooled. But I was calling them the fraud boys, and they ended up proving me right. But I think the it's a weird spot as they're one of the highest scoring teams. Usually that transfers over to playoff wins. You talked about it on earlier podcasts about teams who have those high blow up games with giant scoring outputs. They usually do well in the playoffs because they can find that hot stretch once they get there. And the Cowboys every single year seem to find themselves in a cold stretch when they get into the first round. And so then you got to start going into question marks on why this is happening. Does it earlier? I think the past previous years, it had always been thrown onto the coach. They didn't have that guy in the room to be the professional, to call the timeouts at the right play, to call the big shot when you needed to go on fourth down on the proper, take that big shot opportunity type game. And now you have Mike McCarthy, a Super Bowl winning coach. When you look at career wise, you can compare him to John Harbaugh, which we're talking about as one of the top coaches, very similar career lines as John Harbaugh. And so I think that they have the guy that can call the plays, knows when to take the shots as the coach. They have an offense with all the skill sets. They have a defense. I think you got to then start now finally putting the blame on Dak Prescott.
Yeah, Dak Prescott has gotten a pass throughout his entire career after his great rookie season, which was really great rookie season coming out of the fourth round. I believe he came, he was drafted out of, and everyone was surprised and said, wow, look at this guy go. He was able to replace injured Tony Romo and be able to play at a very proficient high level. And then since then, the story's always been elite quarterback. But he's always came up a little bit short. With a superior line to Kirk Cousins had for his entire career, he's put up similar numbers to Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins, much maligned Kirk Cousins, I should say, has never gotten that same kind of level of treatment. And so I think a big chunk of this does lay at the foot of Dak Prescott. And the defense, you had Dan Quinn at the DC over there on the defense. He did a really nice job. They put up big numbers, but when your defense gives that amount of points up to a first-year starting quarterback in his first playoff game, just like Jordan Love, he goes to make you ask, is Jordan Love that good? Or is this, defense have some flaws and some challenges?
Yeah, I think Jordan Love is that good. There's times where I'm watching this and Jordan Love looks like Patrick Mahomes out there with the way he extends plays with his feet. He's not necessarily a runner of the football, but he's got enough athleticism to get outside the pocket like Patrick Mahomes does. He has these crazy arm angles that he'll throw out there every once in a while, and you saw a lot of those comps to Aaron Rodgers just due to the fact that he took right on over. But he reminds me a ton of Patrick Mahomes with the way he moves around, crazy arm angles, hitting all these guys from a bunch of different spots. And he doesn't even have the weaponry that necessarily other guys have. His best player was Jaden Reed, and Jaden Reed wasn't even the star of the show for the majority of that game against the Cowboys. And so I'm just a big believer in Jordan and Can you say his name one more time for me?
Yeah, Matt LaFleur. Is that you saying?
No, the quarterback.
Oh, Jordan Love. Yeah, Jordan Love.
Jordan Love. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Just could not think of his name for just absolutely blank from my mind as it happens sometimes. But
yeah.
Matt LaFleur is a great coach matched up with Jordan Love. You have your QB and quarterback, and there feels like everything's getting put together now that you have those two pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. Jordan Love looks like the real deal to me. Off platform throws, like you were talking about, just really doing a nice job. The moment doesn't seem too big. You know, the coaching job that Matt LaFleur has done from September, Jordan Love, to what we saw in this first round of the playoffs, that is a much better quarterback at playoff time, and the progression that we were able to watch throughout the season. You know, kudos to Matt LaFleur, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, representing. So, anyways, just doing a great job out there in Green Bay, and it brings up some other conversations that you got to say. You know, as Mike McCarthy, you know that now we're hearing rumors that he might be gone, and there's a lot of rumors flying around about Bill Belichick coming in. I'll tell you what, I think that might be World War III. Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones going at it in the in the Big D. I think that would be must see TV. I don't know if it makes for a good football team, but that is must see TV.
Oh yeah, I mean Robert Kraft just let Bill Belichick do whatever he wanted. Robert Kraft made decisions at times, but that was when Bill Belichick was just quiet and didn't say anything about the decision. Bill Belichick had full control over the Patriots. And going over to Jerry Jones, where Jerry Jones has full control over that Cowboys team, it would be very interesting. I think you would get a culture change in that locker room, which I do
Yes.
think there is a bit of a culture change that needs to happen there. That, something about it just doesn't feel right with that team when it comes to playoff time. They don't have the intensity that you necessarily look for, and so maybe you need a culture guy, but really I think you've had two back-to-back guys which I consider culture guys in that system, with having gosh, I'm blanking on
Jason Garrett.
the Jason Garrett and then Mike McCarthy after that. Two guys that very much bring a certain mentality to your roster. I don't see bringing another guy that's a mentality changer type guy into this roster being beneficial to this Cowboys team, as I feel like it's has more to do with not scheme. You have a great offensive coordinator. I think the defense has looked good at times. It has to do with I think the quarterback position and and then I think having a good quarterback leads to having a better defense, because more time of the possession in the offensive hands, you're not giving bad turnovers that create these bad situations for the defense, and the defense looks better throughout that as well.
Here's always the challenge with quarterbacks in the NFL is that if they're getting paid like top flight quarterbacks, but they're playing in a proficient quarterback role, but not an elite quarterback player, a quarterback of the player of the football game. I'm saying that really weird. So, but anyways, but they're not top level quarterbacks. They're good quarterbacks. They're just not great quarterbacks, but they're getting paid like great quarterbacks, and so you can't put all the other pieces that you need to put in around them to be vying for a championship. And so that's the challenge in what we're seeing with the Cowboys. That's always been the knock on Kirk Cousins, right? Who we can see statistically they're very similar quarterbacks, Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins, but the knock has always been on you're paying too much for Kirk Cousins to be able to put the pieces around him to take your team to a championship. I think we need to be honest and say the same thing is happening with the Cowboys. And, Dak is just not getting the job done. And so you got to say, okay, you either got to go younger and get that rookie contract quarterback, or you got to lower that dollar amount and be able to build some other things around Dak.
Yeah, I think yeah. But you've spent so much to build around Dak. I feel like you've given it plenty of opportunities. Dak I'm on my last straw with Dak, and so it's finally I'm just get him out of there. I think some other team would love him. I think if you move him over to the 49ers, he may be a great QB for the 49ers. If there was some world where you didn't have Brock Purdy in that starting role, if he took over there, I think he would look again like a star QB within that system. And you could probably even win quite a few playoff games with him in that system. I just think that that Cowboy system is a little too reliant on him being an elite passer of the football and doesn't necessarily scheme him up the most open routes. And so I think you move him over to a system where guys get open through concept. I think he would look like a really, really good player because he is that intellectually smart guy that can make the correct reads.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, just quick note on another game in the wild card round that I think a point that's going to be overlooked as we're talking about quarterbacks is Matthew Stafford in a loss against the Detroit Lions, which that's the story, right? Detroit Lions in over 30 years, first playoff win home. They get a second home playoff game in these playoffs. But the story that I want to talk about right now is Matthew Stafford throwing so many off-platform, off-arm angle throws, looking like basically like you talked about earlier about Jordan Love looking like Patrick Mahomes. Matthew Stafford looked like prime time Patrick Mahomes in that game in a loss, granted. And Puka, the real deal in the playoffs, getting the job done. Really impressed with both those guys in a loss that I think gets lost because it was a loss.
Oh yeah, it was a very, very good game. I actually thought, I mean everyone can say, as it's, it was a it was 1 point game, that it was up to anybody's discretion who could have won that game. You play that game 10 times and it gets split 5-5 with those teams, as there was just a very even slate between each, as I thought the coaching and quarterback was better on one side, and the whole entire the roster as a whole was better on the other side. Lions with the better roster, better coach, and quarterback with the Rams. And Matthew Stafford made it clear that he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, just with the amount of passes he hit on just off-platform throws. Puka is an incredible athlete. I mean, just proof that numbers in 40 times and bench press and all those different things don't matter a lick once you put on those football pads and you see them run. If he looks fast on the football field, then he's probably fast. And so Puka, he goes out there and makes plays consistently, breaks tackles to get first downs. It's really impressive stuff.
Yeah, Puka tore it up, and the Cowboys took a big Puka, and that's the way the wild card round went.